Okay, I think we should make a start. People will continue to join. So good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you may be joining us from. My name is Abdul Chohan. I'm the VP of Learning. Welcome to the Learning Redefined online event. It's kind of Showbie's first conference, online, real-time event. We've actually not even had a physical conference in the past as well. So this is kind of relatively new. Just for those of you that might not know about Showbie, Showbie is a hybrid learning platform. There's over 3 million kind of educators globally that have been using Showbie to provide richer, deeper feedback to learners. It's been working alongside educators for almost 10 years since mobile learning started in education. And there is a lot more that you can find out on showbie.com. So for this session, I'd like to welcome our speakers. The title of the session is Evolution of Hybrid Learning in a Post-COVID World. We have with us Angela O'Brien from the Spencer Academies Trust. We have Dawn Haywood from the Windsor Academy Trust. We have Jennifer Dunne from the Newbridge Group, and we also have Greg Hughes from the Ferris Academy Trust. So before we kind of dive into questions and start having conversations about the topic, I'd like to just kind of invite our panelists, our presenters to kind of just talk a little bit about their background, where they're from, their roles, their trusts, and their kind of context of their trust as well. So we'll start off with Angela. Take it away, please.
Thank you, Abdul. Hello, everybody. As Abdul said, my name's Angela O'Brien, and I'm from the Spencer Academies Trust. Our trust is based in the East Midlands in England. We have 23 schools within the trust. 17 of those are primary, and I'm the primary director, so I oversee that wing of the trust. I'm also a founding director of the Derby Research School, which is based at one of our primary schools, and I'm hoping that I can talk to you a little bit about the work of the research school with our EdTech and hybrid approach to strategy going forward. A lot of the work we're doing, and we're at the start of our journey as a trust with EdTech, so it'd be great today to explore with our other colleagues, maybe a bit further along, but also share the insights and learning so far about what's worked well and what we've learned along the way. Our schools really range in size and context. So we've got special measures schools, we've got 6 brand new openers that are starting with just 1 class entry. We've got a special school, which is again something we can talk about later around the approaches to SEND using technology. And we've also got 5 local authorities that we represent. So we're kind of very close together geographically. We can travel between our schools within an hour, which is great for collaborative learning and practice. But it does create some challenges around different authorities being housed with our schools. So it's really good to be here. I'm looking forward to learning lots and also sharing quite honestly and openly, because I think that's the best way to learn with people listening in, and happy to answer any questions I can. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Angela. And just moving on to Dawn from Windsor Academy Trust.
Great, thanks Abdul. Good evening all. So my name's Dawn Hayward. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive for the Windsor Academy Trust, which is a family of schools, a family of 9 academies at the moment based in the West Midlands across a number of local authorities in the West Midlands. We have a mixture of primary and secondary academies and 7,000 children and also 1,200 staff. And I was really lucky in February last year, just before the pandemic, I suppose, really got really kind of took off, I suppose, to go over to Apple headquarters, Apple Park in Cupertino in California, and really see what the possibilities and future could be like for digital technology that enriches learning. And so we have been working with Google for around 4 years or so as a family of schools. and quickly learned that there was, you know, a real power to, in short, put one-to-one devices in the hands of young people. So we're partway along that journey. We have approximately a third of our students that have a one-to-one iPad. The rest have Chromebooks. At this moment in time, in September, there will be 70% of our students that have a one-to-one iPad, and that will be 100% by the year afterwards. But very much listening to Jenny was interesting. Our starting point has very much been this: what is it that makes great learning? What is it that drives school improvement? And how can we use the research and cognitive science to support, to position digital technology to power learning and school improvement, not the other way around? So thanks for inviting me. It's a great honour to be here this evening.
Wonderful, wonderful, fantastic. Looking forward to hearing more from you as we go along. And just over to Jenny, if you can just introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks Abdul. Yes, my name's Jenny Dunn. I'm the Executive Director of Learning at Newbridge Multi-Academy Trust. We are a group of 5, soon to be 6 schools, and we also have a post-19 provision. We have over 1,000 learners. All of our learners have a special educational need or disability. We have young people with autism, profound and multiple learning difficulties, and everything in between. Lots of our learners are very complex and have overlapping needs. All of our schools are very, very different, and all of our learners access the curriculum even before we introduce the one-to-one technology in very, very different ways. We decided about 3 years ago, every single learner would have a one-to-one device, and over 18 months, 2 years, we rolled out one-to-one, and very luckily, the last school got that just the year before, the end of the year before the pandemic, and the technology in the hands of our learners absolutely during the pandemic, when we were open or closed, whichever lockdown we were in, enabled all of our learners to access a high quality curriculum, and it really enhanced that learning opportunity. One of our big passions is not only that the technology enhances classroom teaching and learning, but the skills that our learners develop, they're able to apply them for life, so they become lifelong learners, and they see how technology fits in the world around them, not just the classroom. We're really, really clear that there has to be that connectivity between what goes on in school or college and what the real world looks like. So we had started a project, and we need to restart that now. Everything's opening up around technology in workplaces that our young people access. As everyone said, we're on a journey. We've had ups, we've had downs, we've certainly learned from mistakes, and we will continue on that journey. I don't think we'll ever get to the end. I think technology evolves, and the needs of our learners changes, and the wider world. So happy to share and be invited and join in this discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jenny. Thanks for being here, taking the time out and to kind of share your learning with us as well. And finally, last but not least, but we over to Greg. Greg, long list of stuff that I know you can mention, but feel free, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Abdul. Hi, everyone. So my name is Greg Hughes. I'm Vice Principal at the Ferris Academy in Burton-on-Trent. So we're a very large school of nearly 2,400 students on 3 campuses. And we're in the 9th year of our one-to-one iPad program, so it was quite long established. But we've got a long reputation of sort of helping other schools and universities and innovation with it. So my role really is to integrate the curriculum and every aspect of the computer network learning technologies, CPD, but I'm also trust leader. So we have a family of 7 schools. And ourselves and the other 2 secondary schools have a one-to-one with all sort of 13 to 18-year-olds. And that's about to go to year 7 and 8 as well, which is one of the few good things from the pandemic for us, is that we'll be fully one-to-one in September. So across the trust, that will be something like 5,500 iPads. So it's like university level deployment. I'm also an Apple trainer, Apple distinguished educator, and we run an Apple training center for about the last 7 years as well, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So that's kind of everybody introduced. I think what I would like to kind of start off with, and maybe we kind of go around everyone again, but obviously, you know, you are all kind of leaders within your own right in your organizations. There's a vision around learning and so on. I think one of the, before we kind of start looking at the post-COVID kind of era, if you want, what is the kind of motivation and what is the kind of reasoning behind kind of even using technology in the first place? Yeah. What would you miss out if you didn't, if you know what I mean? Yeah. What was the motivation and the vision to kind of get into that space in the first place? That would be kind of an interesting place to start, because you're all different organizations, and it will be really interesting to kind of hear from you. So let's circle back, and Angela.
Oh, thank you, Abdul. I knew you were going to come to me first. Stop laughing. So the motivation for us, I think you talked about pre-COVID, and I think technology, I told you at the beginning, we're at the very start of our journey. We haven't got schools with one-to-one devices yet. Pre-COVID technology was sporadic within our organisations and probably used effectively by people who were skilled and confident in using it, the teachers within the classroom. During COVID, I think we saw adults and teachers, not just teachers, teaching assistants, starting to embrace technology and seeing them use it in different ways that they normally wouldn't. They had the confidence to try things, and we could see that was developing an appetite for technology to be integrated as part of the teaching and learning toolkit. And I think Dawn referenced this in her introduction around, it's about the teaching and learning as the forward thinking aspect, and the technology is there to supplement it, not the other way around. So it almost came from a bottom up approach, I suppose, of teachers and leaders in schools saying, actually, what else can we do with this? We're seeing it have an impact with our pupils. So the question came from them, which meant it was more powerful because it was coming from the user as opposed to a strategic leader at the top pressing the strategy down. As a strategic leader and a system leader, it was important then that we took that information and really spent a lot of time wrestling with it around, okay, well, why? What's the big why? And taking that motivation of, we want to make sure that the toolkit for teaching and learning has lots of tools within it, so that the learner and the teacher knows which one to select. So is the technology going to actually enhance the experience for the learner, or is it actually something we don't need it for? So not forcing it, but using it to complement what we've got. So I'd say the motivation and the reasoning for using technology is to develop and widen the skill set, develop critical thinking particularly, but actually build that confidence and skills in the adults, the teachers themselves, because they are the role models. The modelling of them trying new things will influence the pupils completely on ensuring that for lifelong learning, they're prepared for whatever the future brings.
Okay, thank you. I think that's kind of quite powerful in many ways. The fact that, and I think it's probably, I suppose, a quality of a successful organization where you see good things that are happening, and then you're able then to kind of evaluate it. And if it is measured as qualitative, quantitative kind of data saying, hey, this is really good, actually, how do we make that happen across the organization? So that's quite powerful. Okay, Angela?
I've been, Abdul.
Angela, you've
not
just...
saying again.
Sorry. Dawn, sorry.
Great stuff. Thanks, Angela. So, yeah, I think 3 reasons. So to answer why invest in one-to-one devices? Why are we doing it? The answer to that from our perspective is, I guess, 3 particular things. 1, we want to power up learning and transform learning. We want our young people to be the very, very best learners that they can possibly be. And that means that we know that learning without technology will only take them a certain way, to a certain level. And we know that the high quality learning, high challenge, access to great resources and transformational learning can really be enriched if technology is used wisely, with looking at the robust evidence base around where it can have maximum impact. So that's the first reason, to transform and inspire learning. The second reason is that we want young people to have access to learning all of the time. And by not having technology, there is a gap for young people that don't have technology, and a disadvantage for young people who don't have access to technology to support their learning. So that was the second reason, to put a device in every young person's hands to enable them to self-regulate, to develop their metacognitive, as Professor John Hattie talks about. The most successful learners are those that have those self-regulation, metacognitive skills, where they can take responsibility and be empowered learners. That was the second reason. And the third reason was really simple. It was seeing what was possible when I was over at Apple headquarters. I went over to Apple headquarters thinking, I'm not necessarily going to buy thousands of iPads. Well, what did I do? Came back and bought thousands of iPads, because I saw what was possible. And when you look at not just technology, but you look at what you want our young people to have in the future, and then see what is possible for the future through technology, it's about, enabling young people to shape the world of tomorrow. That's the third reason.
That's quite powerful. So just picking on you a little bit there, Dunne, right? What was there a convincing factor on your trip that you went? What is it that you kind of saw that you thought, actually, if we brought this back to the trust and to the young people, that this would potentially is going to make a significant difference?
Yes, so I think the way in which Apple constructed that week in Cupertino was really interesting, because we didn't actually talk about technology, and probably till about day 3. Right. What we had are futurists, people who looked at the history of education and the future of education. And so the starting point was really around, where are we heading? What is great education? Where, almost, it sounds pretty grand, but what are the challenges facing humanity right now? And how do we look at how we're preparing young people for the future? And then we looked at what technology can do. So and that is the right way to look at it, because it isn't about what can tech do, how can we then shape education around it, is what do we want for our young people for the future, and how can we maximize technology to support young people to be the people we want them to be in the future, both as learners, people who have a civic and moral impact, and people who actually leave the world in a better place.
Yeah. That's quite kind of profound in many ways. Jen?
Yeah, so I'll be really honest, Abdul. We tried a one-to-one project 6 years ago, and it failed really miserably. And it goes back to exactly what you were saying about being really, really clear around that strategic intent. What are you using the technology for? Why technology? Why are you bringing iPads into a classroom or devices into a classroom? So we took some time to reflect on that and why it had failed. And we worked with all of our staff and some of the young people around what and why and how we thought technology could enhance the learning experience. And lots of it comes down to what Dawn was saying around looking at the world around our young people, the world that they're going to be in when they leave us, and how they access that world. Also being able to bring the curriculum to life for accessibility for some of our learners, and that engagement factor. We have quite a few disengaged learners who've had really bad experiences in school. There's been lots and lots of barriers, and the traditional teaching and learning model was not engaging them. So we wanted to really enrich the experiences of school, and link that into real life. So we did some work with Apple, and we've worked with other people around what that should look like and what our strategic intent was. And as I've said before, it is around enriching and making the curriculum accessible and engaging for all learners, but also looking at the skills the young people will need for life, no matter what their destination is, whether it's in a social care provision, where they will always need to be supported by an adult, or volunteering, or in the world of college, university and employment. We've really unpicked what that would look like, and I think we've got it right up to now. It's working, and it's working well. So yeah, that's why we've done it. In the young people are not living in the world I did when I was at school. We have to equip them with skills, and to embed that and integrate it into everyday life allows them to develop and practice those skills for future learning.
Powerful stuff, powerful stuff. I think that I just remember you kind of taking me back 2008 or 9 when in my hometown in Bolton, when I was a senior leader at the school. This is before iPads and stuff, but we had a very deprived community that we were operating in, and we wanted, the idea of access was really powerful. The fact that when we did some surveys, we found out that almost 10% of our students in the school didn't actually have a computer at home. Many of them still didn't have the internet at home as well. And we kind of launched the idea of it was the iPod Touch project at the time. It was iPod Touch devices and so on. And it kind of feels really weird saying this now, but at that time, like, there was no MDMs, there was hardly any cloud services. We had to, I remember Motsim, the technician at the time, sitting there plugging each device in and configuring it. But the fact that children could just access email on a device and ask a question when they wanted to, just that one thing suddenly began to kind of transform things. They could ask questions and so on. Obviously, things have moved on a lot since then, but I think that the whole concept of equitable access for students is actually something that's pretty real. And at that time, I kind of felt it was like a real moral imperative. Like, if you don't give them access and they don't have access, then that's putting them on a very unfair, not being able to look something up, find something out, and so on, or having to wait to come into school to do that, would give them, would be very unfair from an educational perspective. So completely kind of getting this feel from the panel. Greg, over to you.
Yeah, very similar, Abdul. So we, 10 years ago, we were looking at what we wanted to do well as a school, and particularly things like formative assessment and workflow. We could see how mobile technology was going to become big and change it. And we tried all the things like netbooks and, all the rubbish stuff that just didn't work. So we did the unusual thing of starting our one-to-one with the sixth form and then working down, which is not the norm. But we really wanted to, as you say, be inclusive. So we wanted every student to have a device. We really wanted to look at how we could use that mobile technology to, give every student continuous access to stuff. And really, I think Dawn said it, like, power up teaching and learning. We wanted to bring a digital workflow in. We wanted to bring in, the best formative assessment ideas that we could, so staff could question better. We could do things quicker. And I think, 10 years later, that's still very similar to what we're doing now, just that we've brought in more digital skills and we've come down. But very much the same things everyone else has hinted at. I think it's a mobile world, and we knew that you couldn't go into an IT suite, do IT, and then go back to lessons and open page 50 in the geography book. So it was having those tools for every teacher, for every student, every day, without fail, is the thing that will transform it.
Wonderful. There's a question that's just come through. So, and I think the person that's asking the question would like Dawn to answer this, and I could probably see why. But and feel free for any of the other panelists to jump into this as well. But the question is, could any of the panelists, perhaps Dawn, who has references, signpost us to some studies that are useful to read, which show that integrating technology into school can enhance teaching and learning?
Yes, I will. In fact, what I can probably do would be even more helpful than that. We have a short document called by our head of research that's called Planning for Digital Technology in Education. It's a document that looks like this. It's all referenced at the back. It's about kind of 10 to 12 pages long. And in essence, it's got a summary of the research from around the world that underpins the use of technology in schools to drive school improvement. And in essence, what we've then done is structured it around 5 key takeaways. So they are around pedagogical and cognitive theory and how technology is aligned and supports that. Teacher-student training, so research around the importance of training both students and teachers to use technology effectively. Technology and assessment. There's research in there, particularly around technology and differentiation, personalization, and then kind of a few notes of caution that's come from the research. So there's a whole lot from Selwyn, from the Education Endowment Fund Foundation, from Michael Fullen, from the OECD, and many others. It's just here are the 5 things we think you need to know, and here's the research that underpins it.
Dunne, is there a link or a URL where people can get that?
We do have that on our Windsor Academy Trust website, actually, a summary of it. So I will just pop that in the chat for everybody.
That would be fantastic. Anybody else want to kind of contribute to that, Angela?
Yeah, Abdul, just from the research school point of view, is just signpost people to the EEF website, where there's a succinct recommendation report on digital technology that I'm sure is in Dawn's report, but it's got quite a nice visual as well, as for people just starting on that journey that perhaps just want to capture some of those major things to be thinking about as they're starting out.
Angela, do you want to, it might be a good point here to kind of mention the research stuff that your organization is doing. I know I've been working with some of your research school people to kind of look at, and I know they're doing some stuff around using Showbie in schools and kind of getting input data around that as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
If I talk back where we talked about the motivation and coming from the bottom up and teachers finding during COVID that feeding back to students and the use of technology, they could see that there was a really good opportunity there to be impactful and really make sure outcomes for students was high on the agenda. And I think what we started to do as a research school, we engaged with the research school and wanted to really formalise a project work around the use of Showbie, but particularly looking at the audio feedback, because we found if we were narrowing down again, and I think the panelists would probably agree that your why is the most important bit, and our why was we were finding writing was an area that was most challenged during COVID and has come back and is a huge gap. We wanted to see if we could do anything about that using technology, and Showbie has given us the opportunity in the platform to investigate the use of audio feedback. So we're just currently working with a selection of our schools from the trust, because it's small scale to start with, really ensuring that the study around the impact of it, and then we're going to grow that further if we're seeing positive outcomes, which we have already seen through a bit of trial with one of the schools that has got a really experienced educator who uses Apple in their classroom in Showbie and has used it through all of COVID. So I think as a research school, they're very interested in the use of feedback and assessment. As we've all said, that is a key area of teaching and learning. And we've just narrowed it into writing at the moment, because we feel that that's an area that we want to explore further. And so far, the pupils are just, they can't get enough of it. They're literally chomping at the bit to get more feedback. And they've found it, because it's audio, because it's their teacher, it is bespoke, it is personalised. And from a workload point of view, the teachers are embracing it and are keen to explore and widen it further. So it's a kind of watch this space. As I said at the beginning, we're at the start of our journey and we're trying to do some smaller studies. As I said, with having 17 schools, we could go all out, but I just think from an implementation point of view, that isn't the best practice. Just sowing the seeds, getting the culture, finding those early adopters who are really keen to give it a go and find out, as Jenny said, make the mistakes, co-design, work together, and then hopefully we'll have some good research to share with everybody, and then we can build on it.
Brilliant. Looking forward to the outcome of that as the published research gets out there in the public domain. Before I bring Greg on, because Greg, I want to ask you about a specific article, one of your articles that I actually read, and it was brilliant, and I think it really ties in with the conversation here now. But if I just ask Jenny, from your perspective, what are your kind of findings so far, through your schools and the children that you're working with in obviously your context, a little bit different to everybody else's, but, nonetheless, from a research perspective, what are you kind of seeing?
Yeah, and it's interesting listening to Angela, because the audio feedback has been so powerful for our learners, especially if they've not been in the classroom during lockdown, that they've heard their teacher's voice giving the feedback. It's also feedback that's more meaningful and accessible, rather than getting a comment in your book and trying to find where that comment links to and then going to have to improve your work. We've found young people are more accepting of that feedback, with it being audio and being able to respond to that. And it's also instant in a lesson, but discreet. So if as the teacher I have a look and I see Ellie just needs to do something, and I can send her, that voice recording, she can listen to that, do that, and it's done really discreetly in the classroom, and it's in an instant rather than waiting till the next lesson till you come back. The other things that we've seen is some of our young people use communication aids, which can be really huge and really expensive. And it's no disrespect to those communication aids, they are absolutely brilliant and have a purpose. But what we found is when young people hit the age of 13-14, they don't want a huge communication aid to be able to talk to their peers and to access the wider world. The mobile one-to-one technology with certain apps on there allows them to have street cred, as they tell me, and fit in with their peers, because everyone has an iPhone or an iPad, so they can learn the skills on the iPad and either take that with them or use their phones. And it allows them to have a place to fit in without having something extra to carry around. Another huge bit that we're looking at doing some research is with young people going into employment. So we have pre-intern pathways and work placements, and they're normally heavily supported with job coaches. We've been using QR coding that we've stuck around the workplaces that our young people access. The young people use their iPad to scan the QR code and have a prompt video on what they're doing. So if they've just forgotten, what do I do now? I've been asked to do this job, I can't quite remember. They scan the QR code, there's a video been made of what they need to do, the step by step, meaning that we don't have to have a job coach with them. So the young people feel really empowered in being independent whilst they're on work placement. And some of the companies that businesses we've worked with are absolutely loving the idea of QR coding and leaving instructions and directions for staff to follow, and just to touch base in, not sure what do I need to do here. So loads of really exciting developments. It just keeps growing, it never stops.
Fantastic. I think the link with employability, certainly when you start looking at technology, can happen at an earlier rate, whereas I remember it was just like a 2-week work experience thing that you would go out to and do and so on. But I've been working with the deployment at one of the schools in Glasgow. So Glasgow's got a huge one-to-one program across the city and so on. But one of the schools that I'm working with, they've been using Showbie, and through that, they're able to get employers to kind of join in for certain sessions and begin to interact with students a lot earlier on. And, students are getting insights into the world of work, into different jobs and so on. And that interaction is looking pretty powerful. Not necessarily done as a study or a research thing, but, anecdotally at this moment in time, where that school has put that in place, it's something that they couldn't have done without the technology. It would have been that, you go through that whole process that used to be about work experience and sheets of paper on the wall and where you want to go to and which place and have I got my options and all that kind of stuff and so on. But that kind of is significantly different at the moment. Okay, Greg, just coming on to yourself. I definitely want to hear about Professor Kevin Burden and the work that you've done there. But I do remember I was on my travels somewhere and you put an article on Rosenshine principles and how technology kind of really can amplify that experience for students and so on. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that and then tell us about the work with the University of Hull as well.
Yeah, so I mean, we tried from the start to mirror a lot of the pedagogy and the stuff that we were doing with teaching and learning with technology as well. So it was like that extra, like a catalyst layer to, you know, make it happen, take it further. So, you know, a big part of it, we were looking at things like retrieval practice. So traditionally you do retrieval practice. It's, you know, what's the answer, Mary? Well done. You know, Abdul, what's the answer to that one? And so what you know is that 5 kids in the class know the answer. You've got no idea of the rest of the kids. Have they answered any? Do they not? And it's a very tedious, slow process. It takes a lot of time. So, you know, even just things like that, the ability to use digital technology to instantly see what everyone is doing, to be able to see diagrammatically, can they remember what a graph looks like, and then use that as a springboard to further questioning. So, you know, we found quite early on that if we embedded it right, you know, we could really, you know, save half the lesson in some cases by using these tools well as sort of, you know, do now tasks at the start, as exit tickets, as an aid to sort of instructional design and how we would model student thinking better. And I think all the time at, you know, the back of our heads was we want to get staff to be able to do what they want to do, but better and quicker. So, you know, faster questioning and more effective questioning, being able to get a handle on how the class is performing and feedback quicker. So yeah, I can't remember what article I put out. I put quite a few out, but it was probably, you know, along those lines and some of the you know, the very easy ways I think to capitalize on technology to do that. So, you know, again, we found that Showbie allowed us to do this really well, and it quite amazes me how different faculties actually use it in so many different ways, whether it's, you know, delivery of content, feedback, you know, diagnostic feedback with the little audio feedback bullets on, you know, various bits of a painting or a document. Yeah, in terms of Kevin Burden, so we've done a couple of projects with Kevin. So he's quite a world expert, I think, on like the affordances it offers to, you know, various apps and approaches to teaching and learning. So we've done a really nice one on Girls into STEM that looked at real life context and digital skills and globalization. And that was, you know, incredibly successful. I think some of the things that most of the panel have mentioned about digital skills, you know, we've took that and we've been embedding it lower down, particularly to try and enrich the curriculum without, you know, too much trauma for staff in rewriting it. But yeah, so Kevin's also doing quite a lot on teacher training, how again technology fits there. So we took that down to the teacher level to look at consistent approaches to more effective teacher training with technology. So I think they're all available on iBooks if you know, search my name. None of it's paid for it, it's all free. So I'm not on commission, but yeah, feel free.
Brilliant.
Abdul, can I ask Greg a question? Just
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
to start the journey, Greg. You sound like you're really established in your one-to-one and the practice, and it sounds amazing, and I can't wait to come and see it. You know, when you have new staff join or new pupils that haven't grown up in that culture of one-to-one and technology, what's your big tip that I can learn from of how you get that so successful and quickly?
So 2 answers there. Number one, we do a lot of outreach at Nottingham University with PGCE students. So quite a lot of the people we employ are people we've been out to and they love it and they're desperate to get jobs with us. So that almost ticks its own box. That's really good. Yep. Other than that, yeah, we do quite an intensive induction session. So we try and get people their devices before they start. And we then try and get them some hands-on induction. And, you know, every month there's some IT stuff going on with me or one of the other staff about it. More recently, Andy Jones, who's our Vice Principal Teaching and Learning, and myself have been working together. So Andy's built like a Google CPD portal, because we use Google Suite. So I'm mirroring that. So all the pedagogy stuff Andy is doing on, you know, dual coding or retrieval practice or trying to think, you know, sort of reflection type of stuff. I'm trying to mirror that with how we could then use the technology to take that further. So, you know, there are tasks, there are videos, there are links to people to watch. So in future, rather than me do the same iPad session I've done 80 times, there'll be a video, people can watch the video, and then we can hopefully get them up to speed quicker. And we also have like a lot of people charts of, you know, what we expect staff to be able to do at, you know, starting, a bit more advanced, really advanced. The one change I would say I've learned is, I think when we started, we focused a lot on the really awful staff who didn't want to do it, and the really able staff who were already really good, and probably ignored a lot of the people in the middle, which is like the worst thing to do. So I think now, rather than train a few champions of technology, you know, and they're really good and everyone's down here, what I'm trying to do is just bring everyone up gradually. If people want to raise their head, that's great, but I'm really trying to look strategically at how you raise everyone as much as possible through the approaches that you get. I think that puts you in a stronger place.
That's really helpful.
Can I kind of come in here as well? Because I think
Absolutely.
one of the most critical lessons we've learned is about having capacity to train staff, and also to ensure that there is, so we've in essence released a member of staff for 2 days a week, and her sole job is to train staff and support staff in building their capacity. And what we've also done is, you know, as we're transforming learning, we're transforming the way that adults are learning as well. We're transforming professional learning for staff. So it doesn't need to be so many face-to-face sessions. You know, clearly it's been, you know, tricky over the last 14 months for obvious reasons. But, you know, the way in which we're making almost personalized, differentiated learning available through videos and series of videos available for staff, so it's accessible for them in their own time, not just kind of bolted on to the end of the day when people are pretty tired anyway. So I think that the investment into training staff and thinking differently about how staff learn, as well as children, the students, they are much more intuitive, I will say, but we have to be, you know, invest in the way in which we're building young people's capacity. So their cognitive, you know, their working memory is not loaded with how do I use this app, but their working memory is loaded on the threshold concepts or the key knowledge that we want them to move into their long-term memory. So we just need to, you know, make sure that there is really robust and well thought through and intentional growth and training for both staff and for the young people.
Yeah, I think Dawn, that is so key, because it's not something that you see here. Well, I don't see this in UK organizations. As those of you that might have known me from before, I live half my life on a plane, traveling through airports and schools and all of that kind of stuff. But in a lot of international schools where there's that significant investment in technology, the fact that they're resourcing that development of staff with people as teachers and good teachers that are then able to understand how technology and pedagogy kind of fit together, and to kind of then allow them to go and support other teachers, to run training sessions. I think that's essential. One of the things I do feel is that a lot of the kind of teacher training courses and a lot of the stuff that happens at university still doesn't have enough of that. So you will get new teachers coming into the profession, and there isn't that much understanding of the possibilities with technology and learning, and I think that's an area potentially that, you know, needs to kind of change. But certainly the professional development aspect is something that is worthwhile investing in. I know in 2 schools that I've been involved in, and one that I'm actually helping to set up at the moment, which is in the Maldives, by the way. I choose my locations carefully. We're actually creating a 4.5-day kind of week with half a day dedicated to weekly professional development. So it's time that's allocated for the development of staff, not when they're tired at the end of the day, a couple of hours just tagged on. It's actually meaningful. It goes into the school improvement strategy. It's something that all teachers take part in. There's an opportunity to share best practice. And I think that, you know, there's something around that professional development that significantly needs to change. Having inset days, and this is my own thinking, I'm happy to be challenged on it. Having inset days dotted around 6 times a year or something, I just don't feel it has the same value as something that's weekly timetabled in. And if we really value that, it should form part of our school week where teachers are developed and that growth happens. But
Abdul,
Yeah.
Abdul, can I just come in? Because we've taken that a step further with some of our young people. So we definitely invested time in training and development. And what we've seen is the people who before would never, ever have run a training session, and I'm talking teachers, teaching assistants, HLTAs, have really come into their own with the technology and are leading learning in a community of practice, where before, if you'd have said, can you run a training session on phonics, it would have gone no. But with the technology, they're absolutely sharing that practice. Quite often we'll start meetings with, you know, a quick 10-minute coffee and a cake, and if someone got something new to show us and share, that someone else might be able to use. But we've actually set up we've set up a little genius group in one of our schools where the young people test the apps. So staff will look at apps and go, right, we want you to trial these out, and they trial them and they go, yes, that'd work for Key Stage 1 maths, no, it's too babyish for Key Stage 2, no, that's too, yeah. And then those young people go into the classroom and they train the other children in the classroom how to use that app. And actually, that it's great that's happening, but the skills those young people are developing in being able to research an app, link it to the curriculum area, and then being able to teach other young people how to use it, for young people, you know, it empowers them so much more than what they could get out of a textbook. It's just amazing to see.
Wonderful, wonderful. I kind of that's pretty fantastic to get the students involved in that development aspect as well. Just by the way, I need to correct something. I was referring to Greg's article earlier on. It wasn't on the Rosenshine principles. It was on dual coding. Yeah. And I'm gonna actually just post that. I think it's definitely worthwhile reading. That's in the chat. So definitely worthwhile kind of having a read of that. It's pretty powerful stuff. And you know, I think that there's a lot of cognitive science research information that we know is part of good teaching. I just think where there's an opportunity to use technology to amplify that experience, I think it's kind of worth exploring. So look, just kind of coming back to the title of this particular session, which is kind of, you know, what does it look like post-COVID? Okay. So what does hybrid learning look like post-COVID? So I'd love for the panel, for the panelists just to kind of share, what have you learned through COVID? What does it look like for your trust, your organization post-COVID? Are there things that have been confirmed through COVID and you feel, actually, you know what we're doing is the right thing and this is the direction of travel? Are there new things that you've learned that actually, you know what, we learned this and we need to kind of put things in place around this? I'd love to kind of hear that from you, and we'll go in reverse order this time. Greg, you first.
So the blended learning bit, I mean, we've been doing it for years anyway, so that it was just like, carry on. It was the younger students that didn't have a device that we had to work harder at. So that was fine, actually. But I think, I know a lot of people say the same. It was the whole remote meetings and some of the remote training worked really well, because we've got 3 campuses. You waste loads of time traveling between them. So the idea that you could make, you know, CPD and meetings shorter and sharper is actually something really good that will stick with us. We also, I think, like you mentioned, Abdul, we finish a bit earlier on a Thursday and give the staff an hour of faculty training time, and we don't ask for meetings or anything in it. And I think giving them a bit more self-direction, that really helps. So we've got quite a lot of now Showbie certified educators, which is really nice, and you know, giving them the time to go, to go and do all that sort of stuff. So I think that's been our big takeaway, really. Just some of the efficiencies that we do and the protocols. And I think, you know, I mentioned that we're big, so I've been quite fascinated lately looking at Elon Musk and how Starlink and all that works, and sort of SpaceX and things. And I think we're trying to learn some of the simple aspects of that and actually, you know, reconstruct the way we do things so it's more efficient and go back to what was the original problem, let's do it differently. And so that's quite exciting for us. Not really related to the pandemic, but it has led to that indirectly. So thank you.
Jen?
Yeah, I think definitely relate to that, and what we've been able to do is identify the meetings that definitely need to be face to face because they've not worked digitally, you know, and there are certain meetings where you get that face to face impact. So we're looking at what we keep virtual across all of the sites, rather than having that traveling. Parents' evening, interestingly, we did remotely and had 90 to 100% attendance when parents were able to choose a time that fit in with their work schedules and they weren't waiting around in a hall or on a corridor. So we're definitely going to offer both for parents who would prefer to come in, but also virtual appointments, which are really, really focused and meet the needs of our families. We've also, and it all sort of links in around training and meetings, work with other agencies. Sometimes we can wait 3-4 weeks for someone to come in to do an assessment on a young person. It's been happening instantly, digitally, virtually. Teachers can be on different sites, other people can be, other agencies can be in different buildings. We've been able to do assessments and put solutions in place in a more time-effective way with young people. And then moving that forward now, we're looking at moving away from that model when a mainstream school contacts us and says, can you help? And someone has to get in the car and drive and it's at a convenient time. Being able to do that real time using the technology to support those staff and those learners instantly in the classroom using technology.
Brilliant, thank you. And okay, that's great. Dawn?
Yeah, so I think that we have seen innovation in bucket loads over the last 14 months. And I think what the starting point for us was to harness that by asking our staff to contribute to a journal, which in essence was the lest we forget of COVID-19. And really harnessing that from 1,200 staff, as opposed to it kind of perhaps being driven by the leaders quite so much. So we have got a journal with short extracts from all of our staff around those big lessons learned, and also their thoughts around how we can emerge stronger from the pandemic. So it's got two sides to it. But simply, if I summarize the voice of our staff, the main areas are this. What we mustn't forget is that we are not out of COVID yet. So we certainly have, you know, we have to manage a combination of both remote learning and in-school learning at the same time, at this moment in time. And you know, we've certainly got 240 children out of our school at the moment because of the Indian variant within our area. So that's one thing to remember. We're kind of managing in-school learning, remote learning, and hybrid learning at the, you know, simultaneously with each other. But what I would say is this, is that we've absolutely learned that we need to ensure that all young people have a one-to-one device. We need to ensure that young people can access their learning that is technology enriched in the classroom. And we need to make sure they can access their curriculum through an online curriculum at the same time at home. So if there are misconceptions, they can quickly go to that bit of the curriculum, self-regulate, look at those misconceptions, look at a video, for example. So that's certainly where we're at the moment, ensuring that there's a technology enriched curriculum that can be delivered in school and students accessing at all time an online curriculum at the same time. And then, you know, there's a whole other series of things around the innovations around how staff work, the innovations around how staff learn, and you know, engagement with parents, and you know, all of the things that come from that.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think there's some big takeaways from that, actually, some of which I can definitely relate to in my experience of working with trusts and schools. I'm a chair of a single academy trust, and for me, one of the big things for our board was this whole kind of risk assessment around kind of, you know, what this might look like if it was to happen again. You know, what's the impact on learning? Where does that sit? You know, what are we doing to mitigate that risk and so on? And, you know, having the concept of a one-to-one program is something that is deemed to be quite essential, especially if you're operating in an area where, you know, there's high levels of deprivation. I met a parent, I remember, during one of the lockdowns, and he was just saying, I've got 3 children at school, we've got 1 laptop at home, right? and I've got the school getting in touch with me saying, your child hasn't completed this, and so on. And I just don't know what to do. We're trying to get something on the phone. We're trying to do this, trying to do that, and so on. So I think that that's a very real thing that definitely is worthwhile exploring. Okay. And see, Angela, I didn't put all the time. This was just for you.
Appreciate it. I'll be very brief, but I think the most important thing we learned during COVID was there are new possibilities. There are new ways of doing things. We shouldn't just stick with what we always know and what we've always done. And I think we've built on that thinking post-COVID. I suppose I'll bring it back to a practical sense, is what we learned post-COVID is you need the infrastructure to make all this wonderful stuff that we've heard tonight happen. And we've made sure we've took a lot of time to think about what that is and the investment required as a multi-academy trust, and ensure everyone has a real clear understanding of that. Otherwise it won't work, and then we'll switch people off and find it hard to get them back. So that's a very practical one. But the amazing richness of CPD that we've heard, I think having 17 settings, we've been able to come as one through collaboration and clear communication using technology. So CPD in one setting has been shared openly with another. That whole bespoke personalized approach of not even doing it 1 hour every week, but going to a menu, a suite of activities where there's clear modeling and clear communication has been something that I've found all teachers and teaching assistants. I think I learned that over COVID. There's this hidden gem of teaching assistants who suddenly have got a bit of confidence in using technology because it's thrust in their hand during COVID. And have got that appetite, and it's important that we include them in any CPD and make an effective use of them. So I think for me, I feel like I've increased the school improvement team just by using the capacity within the system, but the technology is the delivery agent, the driver, the platform that has enabled us to do that. And with that comes outcomes, great outcomes and quality first teaching for the children, which is what it's all about.
Wonderful. And you know what, I've just kind of tapped on my phone to see the time, and there's literally 2 minutes left, and I thought we were kind of getting to 1/2 and it's like nearly the session's over and done with. Look, I think we've heard some amazing things and some really practical, useful ideas and really strategies from the panelists tonight. I think one of the things that I've kind of been wondering, but there's no way to kind of do it at the moment, but I'd love to, we've talked a lot about learning and the impact of technology on learning, but when we start talking about 17 schools, 7 schools, 8 schools, thousands of students, and one thing that I would love to know about is the kind of operational efficiencies that technologies have brought to trust. I'd love to be able to see the printing bill during lockdown compared to before lockdown, yeah, and I'd love to be able to see what the printing bill looks like after lockdown as a potential measure of, I mean, it's not about becoming paperless, but actually there are things that we can change significantly in the way in which we kind of use resources. And so anyway, that would be an interesting thing to look at. I'm going to say thank you very much to all our panelists. Really appreciate your time. You're busy people. There's a lot going on in schools and education. I just think these forums are powerful to kind of share with other people and the organization and other organizations as well. And there's a lot of learning that happens through these discussions as well. So wonderful to have you. I'm hoping that, Showbie will do more work with your organizations, best practice stuff coming out. I'm going to be doing more kind of StreamYard kind of podcasts. So I'll probably call upon your school teachers and so on as we go along as well. But I'm going to kind of stop there, say thank you very much. And thank you to everyone that's been part of this panel as well, and to audience that have been listening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Abdul.
Bye.